Okay, I'm Nuria Encinas. My current role is F1 Formula 1 Permanent Scrutineer. So this is very wide, the role. In general, as a scrutineer, what we do is control the cars. I'm making sure that the cars comply with the regulations in a technical aspect. There are many aspects of the scrutineer role. It can be safety, it can be electronics, it can be engine, PU, whatever. In my case, what I'm in charge of is measuring the cars. So I have an optical equipment and I measure the cars with this optical equipment to make sure the dimensions are according to regulations and shape, dimension and shape.
Okay, great. So you mentioned it was F1. So is it strictly just F1 all year?
Yes. Since the last 3 years, it's just F1.
Okay, great. And you mentioned that each person has a slightly different role. So could you just give a broad overview of what exactly an FIA Scrutineer is?
As I said, you have the technical regulation that define many specific aspects of the car, how they need to be and how they need to behave. So we go with each of the aspects and make sure that they are complying. In my case, I'm going to say that is the one that is more common for me, is in the regulation defined what are the volumes where the car needs to fit in. So each part of the car has a specific dimension. This is what I control. So I make sure that the car complies with it. And also there are specific shapes they need to follow in terms of aerodynamics. So we have an aerodynamic teams that does the regulations and comply and check the drawing complies with the regulations. And I confirm that the car complies with the drawing. This is from my side. Then you have a person in charge, a person in charge of checking that the tires comply with the regulation. So how many tires they use, that they are the correct compound, that they are in, they use it as the manufacturer requires them to use it. Or the scrutineers take care of the gearboxes. So they check that they comply with the ratios, they comply with the number of gearboxes they can use, that they are properly sealed. You have a group of people that take care of the PU, the power unit, and checks all the parameters. Even during the race, they have access to all the data of the car, and they are checking in continuous mode how the cars are behaving to make sure that they are behaving according to what is expected to. And we have people for the electronics of the car doing the same, controlling in continuous mode when the car is on track to see how they are behaving, that they have the correct setup. So this is mainly how we do it and what we do. And how we do it depends a lot on what you are checking. In my case, as I said, I have an optical equipment. So when after the sessions, we retrieve the cars and we basically measure them. It's a very new method of measuring. It's optical, so we don't use rulers anymore. We use a laser to measure the car. So this is mainly what the role of a scrutineer is. Of course, it seems that we are only acting at the end of the sessions, but in order to do it at the end of the sessions, you need to prepare for a long time and you need to understand what is happening in the car and you need to follow all the cars. So it's a full-time job. Because, it's basically the same thing that the volunteers does, but the level of knowledge in this championship is higher, and you need to be ahead of the teams. So it requires you to be 100% of the time working on it.
Cool. So what does a day at the track look like for you? Like which time do you arrive? What do you do first?
Yeah, each day is a little different. It starts with setup day, that for us is Wednesday. So on Wednesday, what we do is we arrive track. It depends on everything depends on at what time is the race on Sunday, and then at what time are the sessions. But let's say in a standard way, let's say European standard timing. We arrive on Wednesday. We usually arrive at 8:30 in the morning to the track, and we dedicate the day to do all the setup of the garage, because we need to build the garage. We need to have the equipment, so it needs to be installed, and it's a calibrated equipment, so because it's so accurate and quite delicate, because it depends a lot on temperature and humidity and light. So we need to set it up, calibrate it, make sure that it works also, not only to make sure that we measure well, but also that we are able to demonstrate that we measure well. So in case if there is an issue goes to the stewards and then it goes to a court of appeal, we need to be able to demonstrate that all our equipment was correctly measuring. So this is what we do on Wednesday. So we dedicate all day to set up physically, and on the software we set up everything. This is Wednesday. Also, our colleagues they check what are the cars, because what chassis the cars are, because it's we need to know what is a specific chassis this car is. Then on Thursdays, usually I take the opportunity to go around to also to see the team, to see if they are bringing new things that usually we don't know, to take a look physically to what we are expecting new that weekend. If there are any new cars, I may call one of the cars to make sure that the information I have of this car in terms of chassis is correspondent, not about legality, but just that I can measure it, because if I need I have some specific points in the car that I need to measure it, and if it's a new chassis, I want to see that they are correct, that there has not been a mistake in production or whatever. This is Thursday. Usually also we do a lot of meetings on Thursday because we prepare the weekend. So we decide what is a strategy for the weekend. So what do we want to measure? What is the most critical points? If there was any problem in the race before, we mainly decide and sit down and plan what we are going to do during the weekend. Then Friday already start the session. So Friday, usually we arrive at the same time as the team. So when the curfew ends, that depends on the day. Sometimes it's at 9, sometimes it's at 8, sometimes it's at 10. So, but usually it's around 9:30 in the morning, in between 8:30 and 9:30, exceptions. And then we prepare the session because it's the free practice. Free practice 1 and 2 and 3. We don't measure the cars because they are not classifying, but we are in the pit lane all the time to make sure there is nothing completely illegal or not approved, or that there is not a problem. So this is mainly what we do on Friday. Before the sessions, we may call some spare parts of the car. This is what we call preventive checks. So we are not so much interested in saying to penalize the car. We are just making sure that the cars are correct. So we take several parts and we scan them to make sure that they are according to their design. And this is mainly all Friday. Saturday in the morning is similar to Friday because it's a pre-practice, and then is qualifying. So before qualifying, we review again between us how the qualifying is going to be, what we are going to check, and also how the procedure is going to be when the cars arrive. So are they going to stop on track? Are they going to stop at the garage? Because each circuit is different. Who is going to take care of stopping the cars? Where they're going to stop? All this also operational. We also check. And when qualifying is done, we call, depends, let's say several cars, 3, 4 cars, and one by one. This is just after qualifying, so the cameras are still there around, and they are interviewing the drivers and everything. And we usually call one by one to the cars, and we measure them. So we bring them to our platform, we put them in the lift, we lift the cars, and we measure them. Once this is done, because usually it has to be done in an hour or less because the car needs to return to the garage. There is a small break of an hour or so. And once the car goes on cover, we call one car. Every week in a different car. And we do a long inspection on that car. So we spend 1 hour with that car. And we measure not only that they are in the volumes, but also that their shape is according to what we are expecting. So we take a digital scan. So with a scan, what you do is you go to the surface and digitally record it. So in the computer, it appears the surface that is actually on the car. And this is, we do it in several parts. Also, we do some deflection tests and sometimes other type of tests in addition to this. This takes around 1 hour with the car. When we finish that, it's already usually 10 at night, so we usually go home. Sunday morning, we may call several cars as well, or the car complete, or parts of the car. We may call a front wing, or we may go to the garage of the team to do a test, or we may call it to our garage to do a specific test. And we do again some scanning to the cars, or some deflection tests, tests that are not disrupted to the team, but that give us a lot of information. And usually we do it at the same time that the car presentations are, so we make sure that the teams are not disrupted, so they cannot work on the cars anyway. So we take opportunity of this time. After that, usually I have several meetings with the teams because of all the checks I have done during the morning and Friday and Saturday. There are some part of the checks that it requires me to go to the team garage and check in their system, in the data I have taken with their design. So this usually I do it on Sunday morning. Sorry, I think my camera has gone off. Yes, back. So usually I do it on Sunday morning. That is quite tight because between the checks that we do in the morning, that it takes me an hour. Then we have to do usually all these checks with the teams. That takes me around 2 hours, and we are already in race mode. So because we cannot start all this job before the teams arrive to a track, and the trip doesn't arrive until, let's say, half an hour before the cars goes off covers. This in normal weekend can be 10 in the morning. So we usually arrive at 10, we do all this job, and when we are there, we are ready at 12:30 or at 1, and the race is at 2, so we are already running because we need to go to the grid. We go to the grid. This is now 14:10 because it has just changed. It used to be 14:20. Now it's 14:10. So we prepare the grid to make sure we know which car are in every line. We go to the team. I check that all the cars arrive. We have plenty of systems checking that the cars are arriving, but it's always a last check that is a person at the end of the grid checking all the cars arrive. And then each of us has 4 cars assigned in the grid, so it's 4 slots of the grid. And during the grid, we make sure that they don't do any modification of the car that they shouldn't, because the cars are still in par format. So we need to check all the. We have local scrutineers, that is the volunteer jobs in every car, but we need to be around because, of course, in the grid there's no time. Everything is in a rush, so we need to be very close in case the scrutineer has an issue. We need to be able to help, and also there are sometimes the teams have something and they need authorization, so we are there, and we have also the radio with the technical delegate, so we can ask immediate authorization, and the technical delegate give it to us, so the team can work directly there. This is quite common. Mistakes at last minute, small problems on the cars, it can happen. When the race starts, we just watch race in my case. In the case of my colleagues that take care of power units or electronics, is the most busy time for them because they are checking with the telemetry all the parameters that they need. In my case, is more just being aware what's going on in the race to make sure I know that if a car has broken something during the race or it has touched with somebody, I just take notes. So I know when a car arrives to me after the race, I know that it has been involved in a crash and therefore maybe the front wing is damaged or something like that because it affects the measures of the car. So I wait until the end of the race, and once the race is finished, I repeat a little bit the same process as in qualifying, and I have several cars, depends on how many. It can be 4, it can be 3, it can be 5, that come to the garage, and I measure them to make sure that they are in condition. And after that, we need to do all the reporting because there is a lot of reporting to do. And we pack up. So we go straight from reporting quickly. They are already pushing us because everything needs to pack up because usually all the freight goes on that same night. So this means doing, depends on the circuit, but usually it's at, let's say 12 at night. Sometimes it's 10. It's quite tight when it's 10, but the freight needs to go. So we need to strip down everything, all the garage, all the equipment, everything, pack it out, put it in the containers, and have the freight ready to go. And usually when we finish that, it's like 10 at night or 11, depends on the hour or when we finish. Of course, if we are in Jeddah, probably this is like 3 in the morning because the race is at night and quite late. And after that, we just leave, and next day it's traveling day to go back home or to the next race. This is mainly for the weekend.
When you do all of your measurements, is that something that you and the other scrutineers do when the car is open in pieces or when it's completely put together?
Depends. There are plenty of measurement of checks. Some of my colleagues, for example, where they are checking the data. So as I say, have access to the telemetry. So the car is running and they are continuously checking aspects. So even the car running, do it. Some of the measurements, other of my colleagues on the tires, also you don't need the car to be stripped, but when the tires return to the garage, they check it. But while the cars are on track, we also have systems that are telling us which tires they have. In my case, usually when the car arrives, I first measure it completely as it is, as it finished. This is the first measurement. And then I need to scan some parts. It may be after the car has been stripped and ask them to put them back together, or no, I just ask for a part of it out of the car. I may ask a front wing on itself. So also there are some tests that they require some putting some loads on the car. So the car needs to be assembled, but there are other tests that we require to strip it down. While I'm doing on Sunday night, while I'm doing the measurements of the cars, there are 1 or 2 cars also, they are being checked by other scrutineers in their garage, and they are being asked to strip it down. So they say, just take all the suspension out, I want to check all the suspension. So they are both. When the car is completely assembled, and we ask it to strip it.
Okay, that's some great insights about what's going on at the track. But what's happening when you're not at the track? Do you also have an office role?
Yes.
Okay, so what does it look like? What's your like day-to-day?
Okay, we have office, but you had to understand first of all this is, I said that we arrive on track on Wednesday. They mean we are traveling on Tuesday, and we travel back on Monday. And there are plenty of back-to-back races and even triple headers. So the number of weeks we have in the office are really limited, very, very limited, because it's 23 races plus 1 test. So this means is 24 weekends, 24 weeks of 54. So it's already half of them. When we are in the office, usually the weeks we need to take some days off, because if not, human resources will kill us, because we are working 2 weeks in a row. So we need to take some weeks off and some days off. And then in the office, I have an office in Geneva. So I go to the office in Geneva. Usually, first thing I do is I review all the measurements, everything I have done in the weekend, to give a more in-depth check. Not because on the track you have very limited time, so you go to the things that you have decided to check. But when you arrive to the office, you take them again, you check them again, more in depth, to try to see if you see other things, not only what you were looking for, but to see if you see something that is sometimes it's not that it's incorrect, it's just that you feel that it's weird, or you think this we need to investigate it more, or you take the opportunity to check some numbers and put together numbers of several races to see if you see some pattern or something. That most of the times is nothing that is illegal or something, it's just points of concerns, or even sometimes I could say, this I can improve the check, I can do it faster. So this is usually what I do the first days. Then there is always reviews of the regulations. So we have plenty of meetings to review the regulations, so with the manufacturers and with the teams and with the rest of my colleagues. So we always have projects ongoing of modification of regulations. For example, now we are already working on 2026. So we need to continue on that work to define the regulations. And of course, we need to give the input the current year. And also there may be questions from the teams arriving, things, requesting things. So I want to do that. Is this illegal or legal? We have a team of people in charge of regulations, but we also need to provide support on that. And then we have preparing the weekend, because as you saw, during the weekend we are flat out, so there is not much time to prepare. So usually prepare everything before. So for example, today I'm already preparing this weekend for Imola, despite I'm traveling tomorrow, but today I'm going to prepare all my files, all the setup, electronic setup. So I create the event, I make sure that I have all the chassis, I contact the teams that I have new chassis to make sure that I have the appropriate information of the chassis. So, and this is mainly then when the winter arrives, that is when we have more time. We take some holidays and we work mainly on the new aspects of the regulations. That is always small changes from one year to the other. So we need to implement those changes in our checks. In my case, because we have this all software, so it requires usually some programming to include the changes. And we also improve our checks. So during the season, there's plenty of things I see that I can improve. There are things that can be done during the season. I can implement it during the seasons, but there are other things that are too risky to implement in the season because it requires a major change. And it may mean that the software needs to be redone completely or something that is too risky to do it with such short notice. So this we do it during the off season. And also we take all equipment to calibration. We confirm, we go through every single piece to make sure everything is correct. And I'm prepared for the season.
Okay. Well, thank you so much about talking about the role. But now we'd like to talk a bit more about your own experience of getting there and your academic background. So first of all, were you actually looking to get into this specific role when you started, like when you were younger, or did it more like happen to you?
Well, my path is a little bit not usual. I mean, I'm the only one of my colleagues doing something like this. So I'm an engineer. I have a PhD in engineer in energy technology, and my career was completely different. I was not expecting to go into motorsport. If I had to tell you the truth, I come from a very humble family, and I never thought it was possible to work in motorsport. I saw it as something just for the elite, that it was completely out of my reach. I always loved motorsport, but I didn't thought it was an option. So I did my degree, I did my PhD, and I started working in the industry in several aspects. I was working in energy, that was my main major, with several utilities, and then with renewable energy. And then I moved to trading. I was working in a trading company, and then I moved to the sailing world. So it was my first work professionally in the sport, that it was the sailing industry. It was a manufacturer of rigging and masts, and I was taking care of all the purchases. I was leading the department of purchasing. It's quite technological, so it requires that the purchasing department is led by an engineer. And at the same time that I was doing that, I was a volunteer. So I was doing a volunteer and being an engineer. The most logical place to be is the technical crew. So I was always a technical scrutineer. I started motorbikes. I did a lot of MotoGP, and I start in car racing as well. I started in karting, so I was an official for karting, and very quickly I became permanent scrutineer for the Spanish Federation, still as a volunteer. So I had my everyday job that was paying my bills. And during the weekends, I was going to all the karting races in Spain to be a technical scrutineer. After that, I became technical delegate in Spain of several small championships. And I did that for nearly 10 years. And then that in the moment in my career that I had to decide where to go, I decided that I could no longer do both things, because I had already taken a lot of responsibility in motorsport, that it was using all my holidays. So I was using every single day off and all the weekends, and with a lot of responsibility. So it requires more, not only the weekends, it required me during the week to work during the nights. And in my professional career, I was also director of a department, so I couldn't handle both things. And I had to move forward, move for another job. And I said, it's not going to work going to a new role in my professional career at the same time as keeping motorsport. I cannot do both things. So I started looking to work full-time in motorsport. And the FIA at the moment was looking for a safety engineer. And considering my experience as a technical scrutineer, that safety is a very important role, not in Formula One because it's so specific that each of us has a role, but in other categories, the technical scrutineer needs to take care of safety. That they thought it was a good match. So I did 6 years in the safety department as a safety senior engineer. But I was willing to move back on track, because in the safety department I was office-based. I was going to the track, but I was you were not following a championship, except Formula 3 that I was doing more as a scrutineer. The other championships, you go as a safety 1 or 2 races to do like an audit, a safety audit. The rest of the time is the scrutineer that take care. And I was willing to race one championship, because it's more my background as a scrutineer. So I wanted to go back to the technical aspect. So I decided to switch, and Nicola Tombasi was happy to take me. So I went into the Formula One, and I became permanent scrutineer for Formula One, exclusively for Formula One.
Mm-hmm. So you said that your personal background's a bit different. What kind of background do people who are in a similar position normally have? I assume it tends to be an engineering background for sure.
It depends. Most in the part of electronics, PU, they are mostly engineers. So they came, sorry, I didn't touch on. In the electronic side, yes, they are all engineers. They come from the background. All of them, they are previous race engineers or PU engineers or electronic engineers on the teams. So they have all come through the teams. In the aspect of more physical aspect of the car, or they are engineers or they are previous mechanics. So chief mechanics, mechanic one. So these are usually the backgrounds. There are two exceptions. Manu is one of our bosses. He also came a little bit only from the official side, but he has been in racing teams as well. And I'm the only one that I've been always official. I have never been in a team, involved in a team, never. So I have always been in the dark side.
So in terms of going forwards, you've obviously been through quite a lot of changes, like a lot of roles already, but where would a role like a permanent scrutineer actually lead to going forwards?
Okay, permanent scrutineer, roles of permanent scrutineer that are full-time are very limited. They are in the FIA, they are not only Formula One, that we are a lot of us, but you have also Formula E, you have Rally, and you have a series of championships that they require permanent scrutineers. The other championships, they only work with the delegate, that is usually permanent. And at national level, I'm not sure the V8s, if the V8s are 100%, it's people that is 100% on the road, or if they have other things beside that. DTM, they have people that are professionals, so they are not volunteers, but they don't do only DTM. They do all the championships as well. So it depends a little bit on how it works. Germany is because Germany has like a little bit different way of working, and they have like more permanent people doing several championships, but they are like working 100%. For example, Spain is the opposite. They have only very few people that work at the federation, and they take off everything, regulations, and the rest is people that dedicate only one championship, and they are like volunteers. They are paid a little bit, but it's not a full-time job. So it's quite limited, but technical scrutineer also opens you the doors to a lot of things. Meaning you are in contact, continuous contact with the teams, with the organization, with officials, with federations. So yes, technical scrutineer is very limited. I was lucky enough to become permanent scrutineer. It's quite hard. There's very few options. There's not many positions for that. But I have plenty of my friends and colleagues that started where I started, that they have gone to teams, they have gone to organizations, so promoters, they have gone working for circuits, they have gone working for federations. So, and I sense, so yes, it's very limited, but it has many open doors.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll let Christian take over now.
Yeah, sure. Do you have any advice for other people who want to reach this role? And maybe if you have some things that you did not expect from it when you first started.
First thing I didn't expect is that you can do it. It's not a closed club. I always thought from the outside that it was a closed club, that not everybody could access. It's not true. It's an open club. Everybody can access. So this is the first piece of advice. Don't you think that this elite is not elite? It's not glamorous. It's not glamorous. It's because people think, you work in Formula One, so glamorous. No, it's not glamorous. It's a lot of hard work, a lot dirty hands as well, and have physical work as well. As I said, we put up the garage ourselves and we put it down and we strip it down. We do the packing, so it has a lot of physical work as well. The thing, this is what I was not expecting, so the accessibility of it. Recommendations. First, I would recommend to start much earlier than I did. I started to do volunteering when I was 30. That is quite late. I would recommend to start as soon as possible. If you want to go into motorsport and you are an engineer, there are several schools that are the schools. In France, there are a couple of ones, a couple of studies, and in UK as well. And these are like the way to move forward. If you, as an engineer, you want to go into motorsport, I recommend to go through these schools. But it's not completely necessary. But if you do, it's going to easy things. You see the things. And then the other piece of advice I would do is do every single thing as if it was your big and only opportunity. Every small work, every small race. When I started, I was doing just regional, not even local races. It was first races I was doing was local races, and I was giving myself as if it was a Grand Prix. And every single job, even it was a tiny thing, I'm doing it as if it's the most important job. Even if it's a tiny thing that people say, this is not important, I don't want to do it. Well, you have been given the responsibility to do it. You have been given that role. Do it as if it was your only chance. And like that, you demonstrate that you can do anything. And people start trusting in you.
I mean, that's great advice. I mean, we have so many people who specifically just want to work in F1 because they think it is that glamorous lifestyle and it's going to be
It's
easy.
not. It's not.
It's the hardest one out there. Everything is, to a T. Like, you've got the regulations. Everything needs to be perfect, basically.
Yeah.
So
everything
I guess
needs to be perfect, but everything needs to work perfectly. This doesn't mean it's glamorous, because sometimes for being glamorous doesn't need to work perfectly. For us, yes, everything needs to go to perfection, but this doesn't mean that you may end up eating a sandwich on the floor on days.
Glamorous if you've got the nice VIP pass or the paddock pass, but if you've got the work pass, I think it's a little bit
exactly. It's very different. When the people say our permanent gold pass with the pit lane all the time, no, you have this, yes, but I'm working. And Saturday nights I'm wearing knee pads because I'm kneeling down behind the engine, and it's easy to see me with the black marks in my face because I've been touching all the dirty parts of the cars, and then I touching my hair and my face, and I have on my face dirty. So yes, this is more. It's more what Formula One really is.
Definitely, for sure. Well, I guess to finish off, we have a few quick fire questions and some questions from people from our audience that are quite actually interested in the scrutineer role. I know I mentioned before that we've touched on it as a volunteer, and our volunteer roles tend to be really interesting to everyone. Scrutineer, I think, was one of our bigger posts, so they definitely had some good questions. So I know you said you just do F1, but obviously you've done a couple before. How do you deal with the different amount of regulations that you need to know, whether that's between vehicles or between teams, or just, the new updates teams bring because it's happening all the time, or just the new regulations? Like, do you have a checklist, or do you just know it? How do you learn that?
No, it's the most difficult part of being a volunteer or scrutineer in several championships is all the differences, and you cannot put your head around one. So there are aspects of the regulation that are common. So you need to be always at the beginning of the year. The first thing you need to go is to go to the International Sporting Code and go through all the changes. So the International Sporting Code needs to be your go-to. So there are several. As a technical scrutineer, it's even more complex. So you need to go through the appendixes, usually Appendix A and Appendix L are the two main ones for technical aspect. And these two appendixes, you need to know them by heart. Not only by heart. I don't know them by heart, but because now I'm in Formula One and I don't know them anymore by heart because they don't apply, but still go to them. If you have several championships, you need to know them by heart, because it's the only way. And then see what is the championships you are going to active in the year, if you know at the beginning, and try to go through the regulations. Of course, you don't need to know them all by heart. If you have several championships going to be, it would be ideal to know all of them by heart, but it's quite difficult, mainly if you are a volunteer, you have an everyday job and you have your life, and it's not possible. But at least read all of them. And before the event, so just before the event, go through all of them again to see if there have been any changes. And the terms of what the teams have changed, if you are local scrutineer, usually this role doesn't rely on you, it relies more on the technical delegate, and the technical delegate follows the championship. So it's the one that knows, and you need to rely on them. So if you find something you don't know, you go to the technical delegate and you explain, and the technical delegate is the one that will have the story about this modification or not, and you need to rely on that, because if you are just doing one specific race or for championship, you are not going to be able to know all this, because also you will probably not have the contact of the team. So you need to rely on the technical delegate. But yes, as a volunteer, it's the most complex thing, is to be ahead of all the regulations you have during the year. Also, there are some ISNs are quite good on that, and they do at the beginning of the season, they do seminars for the scrutineers and the officials, reviewing all the different new aspects of the regulations. So this is good. And if you are as a volunteer in one championship, I also recommend to set up a meeting with the SN. If you are a technical delegate, set yourself a meeting with the SN to discuss the main aspects of the new regulation, not only of what is written, but also what they wanted to write. So to understand really what is the meaning behind. So you need to apply what is written, but it's good to know what was behind. So what is written is what is ruled, the other one is not, but it helps a lot to understand what was behind.
What they meant.
Exactly what they meant, and also why they did it. Many of the times it's easier to remember why they did it, and therefore then you can go and check the wording. And the other final thing is, you know all that, but you don't trust your memory. So when you are doing scrutineer, you take the regulations always with you, and when you are applying something, just go to it. Even it's not a shame to go to the regulation and say, "Oh, I don't remember." It's always good to go to regulations and check it. Don't go by memory. And especially if you are taking something to the stewards, before taking it, go to the regulation, read again the paragraph, make sure that you are not making assumptions.
Okay, great. I was going to say, I've got a terrible memory, so I cannot do anything like that. But if you're allowed to have it with you, it makes it much easier. Especially, I mean, I got my local track, and I know that they have volunteer scrutineers all the time. And it's just amazing to see what people will do when they're passionate about something, how much work they will put behind it. They're not getting paid. I find it's like, I know people always say, "Oh, you should volunteer." It sounds like such a hard job. So I admire anyone that has a chance. And on that, what do you find about them? What do you find most fulfilling about your role?
That you manage the competition to be fair. So, and in fact, the most rewarding thing is when teams come and say you thank you. I mean, I remember when I was in Spanish championship, I was technical delegate, a very, very tiny championship, really tiny, that there was no professional teams, all the teams were amateurs. And I remember that one team, I didn't allow them to run because there was a serious safety issue. And they had come especially only for that race. They didn't do all the championship, only that race, and they came on purpose. And I went and said, "Look, you cannot run like this," and I explained why. And then discovered that team was the president of the one ISN, and And after I have not let them run and the race came, they came to me and they say, thank you. And I was like completely shocked because I had just to stop them racing. And I say, no, thank you, because we realized you were equal to everyone and you were saying thanks. You would tell us no to protect us and to protect the rest of the teams. And it's exceptional. Not many times you get that. Usually they just storm up. But sometimes you get people that comes to me, or even in higher categories. Sometimes you take teams saying, no, we are happy because we can see that there are more controls. This is what we want. We want a lot of control because like this is for everyone. It's the same. And this is the most rewarding thing. When usually the teams get angrier is when they see that there are some teams complying with the regulations and some things they are not. So this is the worst thing that can happen in a race. So the most rewarding is that you allow the competition to be, because if everybody does what they want and they don't follow the regulations, it has no sense anymore. So you allow to make sure everybody complies. And this is the beauty of the role.
So on that, when you're talking to teams and drivers and or the teams people, is that through email or is that actually face to face? And if it is face to face, how important do you think communication and people skills are in this role?
Okay. Of course, any decisions needs to be done in writing, and usually not for me. It goes through the technical delegate. That is who has the authority. Not even the authority goes to the stewards. But any decision goes to the technical delegate. But there is a day-to-day job in the sense that you need to check the cars, you need to call them, you need to arrange within the time. You are checking with them with the car. If there is something, I don't mean wrong in the terms of regulation, but something that because my measurement requires some aspects in the car that I cannot measure or something, there is continued communication. So yes, it is important. If you are completely zero in your skills, communication skills, maybe you can do it, but it's going to be a little bit, things are not going to help. Let's say it's good to have a good communication skill just to be able to smooth things, to be able to take the flow and do your job in a more relaxed way, let's say. But again, in terms of, in fact, you need to be very careful of what you communicate to teams, because you are an official, you have the FIA logo on your brand, on your shirt. So usually when you are asking a question, the first question you need to ask yourself is, I'm the person to reply that, or should I report it to the technical delegate? Or to the specialist, because some cases we have some specialists. For example, if somebody asks me something of me, I will directly tell them, this is not a question for me, you need to ask my colleague, or even you need to ask the technical delegate. So this is the first thing you need to one, I mean, communicate, because of people that have very good communication skills, but they tend to communicate too much, and in a role you cannot communicate too much. So you need to be careful that they are the official way and the official path, and this is what you need to do. You have something like that. It just so many times I tell this is not a question for me. This is for the technical delegate, or directly tell them I prefer not to reply because I'm just writing an email to even the technical director, or if I see something it can be controversial.
A little bit more of a fun question on this side. If you could do any other job in motorsport, what would you choose?
Team manager.
Any specific team or championship? That might be a bit better. No.
Okay. I don't think I'm there to be Formula One team manager, I have to say, but but it's a role that you touch everything.
Yeah.
And it's very attractive because of that, because you need to understand. And careful, I say team manager, I didn't say team principal. very different. So team manager, you need to know all the aspects of the car, but you also need to understand your team, what's going on, everything. So logistics, everything. So it's really interesting, I think. But any big championship would be nice, but no, I don't have a preference of team or championship.
All right, and I think we're up to our last question. It went pretty well, but this is, I will warn people, find it the hardest question. Could you badly describe your job in 5 words, but accurately in 3?
In 3 words is checking compliance fairly.